Hi everyone, it's Pete here and welcome to part 1 of my build guide of this, the lovely Tamiya Wild One. This is steps 1 to 24, which includes the chassis, suspension and gearbox. Before starting this build I did bone up on some other build videos, and I got some top tips, and they were from the likes of Mark Bryan, Adam at his RC Playground and Steve at Shen RC. Thanks guys. Now I think as always the Tamiya instructions are very good and easy to follow, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly and only speak when I think I've got something vaguely interesting to say. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Step 1 is charging the battery, which we won't bother with just yet. Step 2 is putting the front steering uprights into the suspension arms. It doesn't say to, but I'm putting a bit of thread lock on the grub screw to stop it shaking loose. Double check the pictures and make sure you put the ball connector in the right side of the upright. Then do the other side, which is the same but a mirror image of the first one. Step 3, we're attaching the bumper to the bumper support, the suspension shaft and the E9 and E10 parts. Step 4 is attaching the front suspension to the chassis. In step 5 we're putting together the front shocks. Now I did buy an E-clip tool but I didn't have any joy with it, so I'm back to my pliers. Make sure to oil your shaft so it slips in easily. Ooh, lovely smooth action. To get the end on, you might find it helpful to grip your rod with pliers. So just do all that again, that's step 5 done. Step 6 is putting the oil in the shocks. They put this red oil in with the front suspension part, so I'm going to see how that goes. I think this is the thinnest shock oil that Tamiya do. It's the usual thing with getting rid of any bubbles before you put the oil seal on the top. The piston needs to be near the top while you're doing this. I think with the design of this shock you was going to get a bit of rebound of the shock shaft, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Just do it all again for the second shock and make sure the rebound's about the same. Step 7 is putting the springs and mounts onto the shocks. One of the top tips is to put some tape around the suspension shaft head to stop the spring wobbling about so much. And at the bottom you can use no ring, or like I am, a little piece of rubber tubing, and that stops the spring wobbling around at the bottom. So it's just a matter of getting the rubber tube onto the BA28 spring retainer part. So that should keep the spring in place much better than just using the standard parts. There, lovely and smooth. And it's the same again for the other shock. Then it's just the mounts to go on the bottoms of the shocks and the bushings to go in the top, and that's step 7 done. Step 8 is attaching the shocks to the cars and also the front body mount. And that's it for step 8. Step 9 is attaching the rear suspension shafts. Step 10 is attaching the side guards and gearbox mounts. There's also this body mount that holds the battery door shut. Step 11 is putting the two halves of the roll cage together. There's a couple of bits to trim off this, including this little knobble on the top. It's just a matter of screwing the BA5 shaft onto one side and then winding the other half of the cage on. Step 12 is attaching the roll cage to the chassis and also attaching a couple of body mounts. Step 13 is building up the gears of the differential and putting them into the half of the gearbox. I'm just using the included ceramic grease for all these bits. As with all my Tamiya kits, I'm using metal bearings to replace the plastic bushings. You need to just put a bit of sticky tape over the drive shaft so it doesn't fall out while you're putting the gears in. Step 14 is putting the rest of the gears in the other side of the gearbox. Now the BB25 part doesn't need to be replaced with an 850 bearing because in this case it's only a spacer which is pushing the bevel gears of the diff together. Eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that I forgot to put the A10 part on the side of the gearbox in step 13, so I'm doing that now. That all seems to be moving freely, so it's on to step 15, which is attaching the gearbox to the chassis. Step 16 is continuing to attach the gearbox and also another body mount. Step 17 is putting in the rear axles. You need to trim this gaiter as it shows in the picture. One of the top tips is to use O-rings to get the gaiters to seal onto the drive cups a bit better. I didn't have any O-rings, so I'm just using the trimmings to see if they help. I'm using this general purpose LM2 grease for the drive shafts because I think it's better for metal parts, but I could be wrong. Step 18 is attaching the rear axles to the car. Step 19 is attaching the pinion gear to the motor. I always use thread lock on these to stop them shaking loose. The distance from the top of the pinion to the motor needs to be 16mm, so I'm half tightening it and then checking and then tightening it up properly. Step 20 is attaching the motor to the gearbox. You just need to make sure you use the right screw holes for the size of pinion that you used. Step 21 is putting together the rear dampers, which are pretty similar to the front ones. Step 22 is putting the oil in. The rear shocks are packed with this yellow oil, so I'm using that. Just checking they feel about the same. Step 23 is putting the springs on. Unlike the front shocks, the springs on the back ones fit pretty well. Step 24 is attaching the shocks to the car. Okay, that's about it for this one. In the next part I'll be finishing the kit and taking it for a little test drive. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching. Please like and comment and all that, and I'll see you next time.